I challenge you to a duel!
Because it's two people that we like and identify with.
Two people you care about.
No matter who wins, we lose.
Let's count them down.
If you know the outcome of a fight, it's kind of hard to be invested in it.
The goal of conflict is understanding.
How do you do things with one hand tied behind your back?
Yeah.
It showcases how skilled you were if you're able to succeed.
The hero can't be successful using his opponent's means. Then that's a signifier of defeat. I don't know how much I see this as a fight scene so much as I see this as a massacre.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Frame of Mind, where psychology and filmmaking meet at the intersection of storytelling. My name is Jordan. I'm a filmmaker.
My name's Curtis. I'm a psychotherapist.
And today, I'm so excited. We're taking a look at the psychology behind fight sequences.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun one, I think.
I think this is one of those things that everybody thinks about fight sequences, and immediately your mind goes to the action because it's a fight sequence. The thing that draws your eye is the fact that there's amazing choreography, there's all these stunts happening, it's sometimes really dangerous, and it's really captivating to see somebody do something that's borderline impossible. But I think what people miss a lot of the times is there's a lot of good storytelling that happens through fight sequences. And so today we're going to be focusing a little bit less on, it's not going to be like, hey, here's the top 3, 4, 10 best fight sequences where there's the coolest action. It's more going to be, what are our takes on what makes a uniquely cool fight sequence from a story and a character perspective.
Yeah, I like the idea of kind of digging into these scenes that people might have seen before, but pulling something a little bit different out of them other than that's super cool, the visuals are awesome, I love that mood. It's like, what is that telling you about a character? What's the story process or the story beat or the technical structural tool that's being used in this process?
Yeah.
So something a little bit more nuanced and detailed, but kind of the fun things I think that we both find to dig our teeth into.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
This is the nice thing about things that are story-based or like narrative-based is that there's always new stuff coming out. Mm-hmm. So the pool of stuff we could talk about is essentially infinite.
Yeah.
And so this might be the first in a series of a couple of different videos that look at these kinds of perspectives on fight scenes.
Yeah.
Depending on whether or not people like it, if there's suggestions, if there's things people want us to break down, could be really cool.
Oh no, here comes the final boss.
Hey, bud.
Mr. Boomer. Well, he'll probably come in and out through the duration of the episode. So
you had a different take on or a different direction that you wanted to go with things because you were predicting.
I think I know what direction you'll take your examples, and I chose 2 examples that I think I really loved and my mind gravitated towards anyways, but I think they're going to be aiming at something a little bit different than you are.
I'm super
and
curious.
So it's off the beaten track a little bit, so I'm wondering if it might be better to start out with one of your examples.
Sure, yeah.
Sweet.
Should we start with a classic?
Ooh, I love a classic.
Let's start with One Piece.
I challenge you to a duel!
Part of why I love the fight between Luffy and Usopp is a huge part of it is how the conflict is set up and established.
Mm-hmm.
Is Mary gonna be okay? I mean, can we get her repaired with the money that we have left? We're lucky we have all these awesome shipwrights to work on her, but I know things are gonna get rough out there, so I want her to be stronger than ever before. Do you think those guys will still do a good job if we only have $100 million to pay with?
Yeah, but we aren't having them repair it. We decided to get a new ship instead.
This is always the interesting part for this scene for me, where it's like, because Usopp was captured and he was away from the rest of the crew for a while, he doesn't know what everybody else knows, which is at this point, everybody else in the crew knows that the Mary is unrepairable. And so this is kind of in this moment of conflict, this is the first time that he is getting that information.
Yeah.
And I think when we're talking about fight scenes, the thing that we're probably going to talk about a lot today is this idea of not necessarily fighting, but conflict and the difference between those things.
Yeah.
I'm not joking about anything! This was a hard decision for me, too!
Oh yeah, I feel really sorry for you! Already window shopping for a new toy!
You trying to pick a fight with me?
Just spit it out already! If we can't afford the repairs because I screwed up, then tell me! Don't show me some stupid catalog and change the subject! I want to know the truth!
Mary can't be...
Like instantly there's a lighting change.
Yeah.
You can see like visually the tone has matched now the shift in tension. That's
And
going on
especially
under the
like
surface.
the shift in Usopp's recognition.
Yeah.
Like he had this idea of how things were trying to, and then all of a sudden it's, the reality of what's happening is actually as dark as this scene now reflects.
You mean this ship? This ship that we're riding on right now is broken?
That's right. It's only a matter of time before she sinks.
So that's it? A bunch of strangers tell you to scrap your ship and you don't even ask any questions?
That's enough.
Go give up on the Mary! What about all the adventures we've gone on together? What about all the battles we've fought? She's our friend. She's one of us. Are you going to abandon her for another ship without a second thought?
So already there's tons of stuff in this. And I'm curious if there's anything that's like standing out to you so far with what we're saying.
So right off the bat, I noticed that it's interesting how the conflict is about relationship. How do you, it's on the surface, it's, hey, you are making a different decision. I don't respect your decision as the captain. But under the surface, it's like, hey, you see the relationship we have with this ship differently than I do. The way that you are making decisions tells me that you don't value the thing that I value. You don't value this thing as much as me. And it hurts me because now you're making decisions that impact my relationship with the thing that I love. In a sense, it's almost like your decision, maybe on the surface, as right as it is, as much as it's the correct call, it's like this decision is taking away my friend. Like you're asking me basically to give up a relationship in order to move forwards.
Throughout the rest of the episodes before this, but it comes to a head in this scene. Usopp is doing a couple of things that psychologically like really stand out to me. I think obviously there's denial. Like there's so many times where it's like, oh, stop joking, or like, no, we can fix it. And it's like, don't listen to the ship. Like all these things that would kind of be ridiculous. But why is that his position? Part of that is because he's having a challenge in accepting reality. And I would say whenever you're looking at somebody who is in denial about something, that framework is what you want to take into looking at why they do what they do. Denial exists because somebody cannot cope with the reality that is being presented to them. And then it leads to another very interesting psychological experience that I think drives a huge part of this conflict, coming mostly from Usopp's part, which is projection. Projection is the idea of, I hold a particular belief and I am going to assert that belief onto somebody else and interact with them as if that is what they believe too.
Interesting.
And so the projection that I'm seeing here is Usopp's belief that he is weak.
What? It happened because I'm weak.
Underlying this entire conflict is he's coming off of an experience of, I couldn't do something. I was the weak one. I got beat up. I had to get saved by everybody else. And there's a really interesting element of identification that I see happening here. Like, for lots of reasons, because the Going Merry is the ship that comes from Usopp's island, because it was built by the shipwrights that are from his hometown. Like there's so many pieces that it's because the ship was given to him by Kaya. Like there is a whole lot of attachment that he has to the ship. But what I see happening is that there's even more than attachment. Like what is the problem with the Going Merry right now? The Going Merry is broken, cannot be repaired. And how does Usopp frame what Luffy is doing? You're going to give up on somebody when they're struggling. You're going to abandon the ship when it is in need. And he's coming off of this experience of, oh, I've just lost all this money. I'm not capable. And he is perpetually felt for like the last couple of arcs, like he's the weakest person in the group. And so, like, even when he talks about like him, Chopper and Nami, like the weakling trio, because it's the three weakest people in the group. But like the rest of them have jobs to do. They have important things. His job is being the shipwright. He's not doing a very good job of taking care, or he's kind of outside of his bounds right now. He's past his skill set,
which is kind of interesting because in a realistic way, he is the only character who's misplaced in his job set. Like,
very much.
Chopper's a doctor. As much as he is weak, he's actually kind of not, we'll let that slide. It's like Chopper's a great doctor. Nami's a good navigator. Zoro's a good swordsman. Sanji's a good cook. It's like Usopp's not a good shipwright. He's the one person that's left out. He's the one person who's actually not able to do a good job of anything.
He's feeling very odd man out. And it really seems like in this scene, what he is seeing is like in this like hierarchy of the crew, if the Going Merry is going to be dropped out, guess who's next?
That's a good point.
And Usopp is terrified, it seems like, of being abandoned because he is weak.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's like, just tell me, just like treat me, like bring this reality on of you're going to drop me because I didn't do a good enough job.
Yeah.
Don't let me kind of live in this fantasy world of you guys actually like me when you really don't.
Yeah.
Why? Because Usopp believes that he is not worthy if he is weak. He is not worthy if he's not capable. And you see Luffy being like the entire time, that's not what I actually think at all. Like, if everything that he says when he finally says the going merry can't be fixed, he's like, if there was another way, I would do it differently. But because there's no other way that I can do this, we have to move forward. This is my choice. And it's kind of one of those things where Luffy, Zoro talks to him a lot in this arc about the decisions that he makes as a captain. And there's this piece where he is trying to be a good captain as much as he can, of saying, as a captain, I have to make super hard decisions.
Yeah.
So once I come to a decision, I'm going to go with that decision. And unfortunately for Usopp, everybody else got to see Luffy struggling to make that decision.
Yeah.
No way, we're not getting a new ship.
Luffy.
The Going Merry is the ship of the Straw Hat Pirates!
And then coming to the point of, okay, certainty. And now because I'm the captain, I have to carry forward like everything's going to be okay and everybody's going to trust me and like, come on, guys, we've got this. Don't worry about it. But then because of Usopp's projection, how does he interpret Luffy's, hey, this is all going to be okay? Instead of it being, this is a hard decision, I have to kind of shore this up with confidence, he sees it as so dismissive. Just like, the weak don't matter. Who cares? He doesn't actually care to believe in the strength of his crew when they're kind of at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
So lots of fascinating things that really set this up and structure it. And it leads to this like culmination in the fight.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting too how you could also interpret it a little bit as the Merry is a representation of Usopp.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, this is a foreshadowing of what's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
It's broken. I'm broken.
Yep.
We can't fix it. We can't fix me. It's like, well, the going Merry's too weak. I'm too weak. This is what the future that I have to look forward to.
Exactly.
So it then makes sense why he's going to leave, because it's like, well, it's almost like, would I rather be told that I'm not good enough and leave, or would I at least keep my pride and say, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to make the decision to leave on my own.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a good way that you put it, because a huge part of identification is somebody who is attaching a sense of self to something else. Something else is a representation of me. And the challenge with that is that if we identify with things that aren't truly or exactly us, it's not accurate. And so, like, even though they really blur the lines here with like the soul of a ship, to a degree, Luffy is right. The ship is not a person. It's a really important component of the crew, but it is a material object that serves a purpose and a function and is prone to falling into disrepair. And so what I often find is that people will do a very similar thing where they will go through so much psychological distress when they identify with something that is not actually themselves. Whether that is a role, whether that is an ability, whatever it is. But when there is something that can eventually be lost, if you identified that, you lose yourself with it. And so here Usopp is feeling like he's about to be lost too.
The one other thing that I realized with this scene is that Usopp highlights his prioritization of relationships when he's like, you're going to trust a bunch of random shipwrights over like your friend. They go like, these guys are just out to get you. There's a whole lot of distrust. And it's like, you're prioritizing what strangers are saying over what I'm saying. And so even like a random stranger is more valuable. Their opinion means more than mine. Because maybe they do. And there's an interesting piece where you're talking about denial then, because how much could you then relate that back to somebody who is in a bit of a tough situation and they're getting professional help that tells them you need to make some changes, but then that clashes with their reality. It's like, how much is that something that maybe you see in your own profession?
That is probably one of the biggest pieces in why people get stuck in therapy. Like, you think about a block or a space where people aren't able to make change or progress or feel like things are getting better for them, a huge part of it is when they come face to face with the reality and like, listen, these things will have to change. You might have to lose that relationship. You might have to change what you're doing. You might have to see yourself in a different way. You might have to give up this way that you've looked at yourself for so many years. And if people feel like, I can't do that, I can't face that, then it'll be, well, there's got to be a different way, or maybe let me try something else, when it's like, we aren't willing to, at that point, the gains do not appear to be worth the sacrifice.
I see.
We feel like we're losing way too much without receiving anything that will be supportive in return. We feel like my world's going to fall apart, but it's not going to be reconstructed. Right?
I challenge you to a duel! I can't stop you from destroying your own ship, but if I win, I'm taking the Mary and leaving. Either way, when we're done, the last bond between us will be broken.
The entire time One Piece has been going up until this time, it's been external fighting.
Yeah.
But this feels almost like a little bit like civil war, like internal, like conflict within the protagonist is like a really interesting thing to see, because it really puts you into the state of like, oh, who is right? Because I viewed all of these people as people who I identify with. These are the good guys. And now if they're squaring off against each other, it's like, oh, well, who's actually right then? Because you could take, like, I think people are more primed to position themselves as aligned with Luffy on this one, because I mean, it's a little bit easier to see that, you know, Usopp's a little bit, you know, the going Mary's broken. It's not going to work. You got to move forward with this decision. But it's like, the going Mary is also kind of like a part of the crew. We cried 2 episodes ago about the going Mary going down.
Yep.
It's like, oh no. So you do have this really tied in relationship with, like, you do feel for Usopp's position.
Yeah.
And so it's a weird piece of internal conflict, I guess is the best way to put it.
And there's something that I think lots of people feel like the Water 7 arc is one of the best arcs in One Piece.
I would say so. Yeah.
Because of that. Because there's this shift that's happening now where the audience has been so used to it being the, like, oh, your classic shonen, whatever, Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
Good guys go and fight the bad guys and the team. But
Yeah.
then here's this like total flipping on its head. And it really makes you stop to step back and question what's happening. And the other piece is that for whatever intensity level there were in the fights before this, there's something about the internal conflict that makes the stakes higher.
Yes.
Like if you watch the crew's faces while this fight happens, you really see how difficult it is for them to watch this.
Yeah.
Like there's something so important and vulnerable on the line in this fight.
Because it's 2 people that we've considered protagonists, people that we like and identify with.
2 people you care about.
No matter who wins, we lose.
Yeah.
So like something bad is going to happen no matter who wins, no matter how this comes out. It's like you're not going to like 100% the result.
Yeah.
Because either Luffy's going to be defeated and you're going to be like, ugh, or Usopp's going to be defeated and has to leave the crew. It's like, ugh. It's like you're not going to like the outcome no matter what happens. And so it puts you on the edge of your seat. It's because like something's going to break.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of how it's going to happen now.
Yep, exactly.
But there's something you don't know about me. I have 8,000 men on my side! If you don't surrender now, I'll order them to attack!
What? Why didn't he tell me?
Seriously, just go inside.
If you're gonna fight, then at least take this seriously!
Ooh, Sappudu!
Gum! Pistol!
Special attack. Catch-up star. Pity for your enemy. That's awfully arrogant, don't you think? Flash style!
Something awesome about the character traits that you see showing up here, where Usopp has kind of been like this jokester, the liar, the guy who's always kind of a very unserious character.
Yeah.
And it's very cool to see him use that characteristic here in a very intentional way to give himself an advantage in a fight that's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah. And not only that, in a way that we buy as the audience.
Yeah.
Because like lying and being deceitful, that goes along with Usopp's character.
Yep.
And it also makes sense that Luffy would see him in a vulnerable position and feel empathy for him.
Yep.
And then he uses that against him. It's what feels correct. And so now Usopp having an upper hand on Luffy, it's like on paper, you say that to somebody, it's like, there's no way. There's no possible way that Usopp could last even half a second in a fight. But because you're taking advantage of that empathy, because of the relationship between the two, like it's structured in a way that actually makes sense, and so we buy it, and it is more interesting as a result.
I wouldn't jump around too much if I were you, cause the whole battlefield is Caltrop hell! Shoot again, shooting star!
It's kind of interesting how this is the first time you're actually thinking, oh, Usopp is actually a little bit dangerous.
Yep.
This came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Talk about unexpectedly powerful.
Yeah.
Smoke? I'm using a breath dial. And now you're completely surrounded by gas! Gas?
Don't tell me he...
Sorry! Flame Star!
I think it's kind of cool, too, how in Luffy's facial expression there, you could see that he wasn't physically done. He was just emotionally conflicted.
Yeah.
And so you've got this interesting contrast of like big fight, big explosion. You're seeing Usopp in a new light. He's actually kind of dangerous. And Luffy's like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to actually hurt the friend that I care about.
Yeah, because he's really trying.
Cheers to a new ship and a new crewmate! Yeah!
So, how do you like this one?
Yeah, keep it. That's the one. Okay, it's all done. Now the Going Mary has everything she could possibly need.
Usopp!
There's something about that I love where it's like, the piece about that that's so awesome is that what is Usopp's goal? Like everybody sticks their foot on the barrel and they all pledge their goals to the crew. What's Usopp's?
Oh, I can't remember. What was it?
So Luffy is Pirate King. Nami is Map the World. Zoro's strongest swordsman. Sanji is all blue. Usopp's is, I want to become a great warrior of the sea.
I guess I'm going to be a brave warrior of the sea!
And so it's really interesting to me when I think about what's the whole framework for this fight that has been set up. Usopp is weak. But what Luffy says right here,
You idiot. You knew it would end like this. You knew you could never beat me!
but what is more attuned to the ethos of a warrior than fighting even when you know you're going to lose?
Yeah, 100%.
The idea of being a warrior means fighting no matter what for what you believe in, at least in the most probably adaptive, healthy version of that archetype. And so it's cool to see, even though Usopp is both like feeling weak generally, is weak in this fight because it's not Usopp at 100% versus Luffy at 100%. This is Usopp just having gotten his ass kicked against totally fine Luffy.
Yeah.
So even though he's at his potentially weakest, the fact that he showed up and fought the way that he fought really shows you how much he actually has that quality of a warrior already within him. And it's just a matter of how is he on his journey going to be able to take his abilities, his capacity, and have them match the thing that he already has inside.
What I find cool too is that you have this thing that he's searching for, becoming a great warrior. And the thing that I caught from that, or the thing that I thought he was searching for, because that's the thing, that's that he states that his goal is to become the greatest warrior. But why? What's under that? And for me, it's like, it feels like he kind of wants respect and honor. That's what I feel, because everything that he's doing is in lying, like, I have 8,000 men under me, I can do X, Y, Z, I'm going to be the greatest, I'm going to be the captain, blah, blah, blah. He's getting at this idea of he wants people to view him a certain way. He wants that honor and that kind of respect from everybody around him. And what's the least honorable and least respectful thing that you can do? It's lie, it's deceive people through who you are. But in a weird way, it feels like, kind of like you were getting at, showing that he's a good warrior. he also kind of gained everybody's respect in a little way through this, because he showed, oh, you can't beat Luffy, but you can still kind of hold your own. You can still withstand pain to forge an attack. You can still think ahead and strategize. It's like, you kind of respect him a little bit more through this fight, despite the fact that you might not side with him in this conflict. He showed a side of himself that ingratiates him to the audience. Even though he lost, even though he's wrong, you still like him more through it.
Yeah. And I think this goes to a deeper idea that I really like about fight scenes in any media, is that as an audience member, what's really important in my perspective is to use the same kind of framework that I will use in couples counseling with people who often get into conflicts and fights. And what we tell couples always in therapy is the goal of conflict is never about winning. The goal of conflict is understanding. When two people come at odds, what are you supposed to be aimed at? You're supposed to be aimed at grasping the other person's perception so that you understand them. And if you do that, then you get a little bit more understanding of, okay, what should we do about this? Should we continue to move forward together? Should we not? How do we resolve this problem? It all comes from understanding the other person and what they bring that lies beneath their conflict. So there's a lovely part here where what do we begin to understand about each of these characters through their conflict? And I think we learn so much about Usopp's character, and it becomes so deepened and more understood because of this particular conflict. Like, it brings all that stuff to light, and all these different pieces come together to forge what feels like this really cohesive, holistic, well-rounded character.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't look at on the surface and say is a holistic, well-rounded character, but in this moment, he really is.
99% of the time, we see the Usopp that we've seen throughout the entire show, and there's just this 1% that shows you this is actually a part of his character. This is what's under the surface. You take that throughout the rest of the show. Maybe he doesn't show this level of warrior-esque mentality or being able to hold his own in X, Y, and Z. But you still take this moment throughout the rest of the show, and you know that that's there.
Yeah. So it's like a little flash of his core.
Yeah.
That you're going to see become hopefully greater and greater and greater throughout the series.
Yeah, you can have a character who has catchphrases and tropes, and they can be one-dimensional 99% of the time, but as long as you see that 1% every so often, even once or twice, that'll carry throughout the rest of the show, and you now have a completely different understanding of that character, and they feel more well-rounded, even though you're not seeing that 24/7. I think that I always liked the scene. I always appreciated it, but I think seeing it with a little bit of new eyes now, maybe viewing it maybe as a couples counseling therapy session between Usopp and Luffy.
To a degree, yeah. Although I never recommend that couples who are working with me get into a boxing ring at any point in their process.
Probably not the best idea.
That's not helpful. That's not advice.
Yeah. I think there's a reason this sticks in most people's minds, though, because it is such a culmination of interesting fight sequences, interesting choreography, things that you weren't expecting. But all of that is based on the characters themselves. The way that they fight tells us about who they are as a person. The way that Usopp strategized tells us he is a little bit deceitful, deceiving, a little bit of a trickster, definitely a liar. All that shows up throughout the course of the fight. But that's in line with their character, and that's what makes it interesting, because the fight is showing us just not only in what their ideologies are representing, what they're bringing into the fight, but the way that they choose to engage in the fight also tells us a lot about them. The way that Luffy showed restraint tells us that he really cares about somebody who even in this moment is his enemy.
Yeah. And it's cool because part of why I love this scene too is that it is very simplistic. It's not really over the top. It's not the most well animated thing you'll ever see.
Yeah, there's a moment where I was almost going to stop you and like point at Luffy drawn. It's an over the shoulder shot of Usopp and Luffy's in the background. It looks like he was drawn by a 5-year-old.
Yeah, like so simplistic. That was clearly one of those budget pieces where it's like, we don't need much for this one.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like it's going to win any awards for its technical animation expertise. It's not like it's the most amazingly choreographed thing ever. But part of why I love it is because it's clearly demonstrating that you don't have to have those things to have a good fight scene.
Yeah.
Like you said, what drives the fight scene? Character conflict. Two characters that we are invested in come to a believable conflict with one another. And no matter what happens, we're going to see a consequence or something change dramatically as a result. So no matter what they did with the animation, with how they structured the fight, it was lovely that they structured it to really reflect both their characters. But no matter how technically well they animated this, I feel like this was always going to be a good fight scene because of how they set it up.
Yeah. It was brewing for the past 200 plus episodes.
It's built on a really solid foundation.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I think that if I'm going to continue moving forward here, I think I want to bring up an example from a completely different franchise.
Perfect.
I would love to show you, there's this great show called One Piece that I would like to show you an example from.
Oh, how did I know that we were both going to pick a One Piece example?
Why? Absolutely. How could we both not choose a One Piece example? I feel like we have shed more tears over One Piece so far than any other franchise.
Yep. To be fair to other franchises, when you have 1,100 episodes, there's a lot of tears to be shed for
Exactly.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay.
So, what does it do for your story when your main protagonist is completely and utterly defeated? I think it's a fascinating example of a really important turning point in a series and in a franchise that does so much structurally for not only the characters, but also the story. Because right before this, for context, we had Luffy saving the mermaid girl, and Charles, the celestial dragon, shooting the octopus dude at the chest, and completely loses his stuff and punches him so hard that he removes color temporarily from the world.
Yep.
So we're coming off of the high of like Luffy is honorable, he's strong,
He's going to stand up to the highest authority in the world.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden, they get completely and utterly decimated. What this sets up is an entire arc where Luffy just keeps losing and losing and losing.
Yeah.
He loses his entire crew. For context, like, we think that they're dead.
Yeah, we have no idea what Kuma's ability does yet.
Yeah, it's kind of implied. You have plausible deniability to understand they're not dead, but the metaphors and the symbolism of the popping bubbles.
Yeah, and we've never seen anybody who he's disappeared ever come back before.
Yeah.
It was their exposure to this was one time where I think it was Nami or was it Robin, like saw Kuma do this to somebody, and it was like, what happened?
Yeah.
We don't know. We got to go. That's it.
Yeah, and even just the line at the very end, Kuma says, we will never meet again.
もう二度と会うことはない。さらばだ。
You think that everybody's dead, and in a world where being sent to another island basically means you may never see that person ever again, it might as well be.
It really feels like it sets them back a long way.
Even if they're not dead, it's like, this is such a backstep. But after this, you're going to have Luffy go to Impel Down, where he's going to lose Bon Clay.
Yep.
He's going to go to Marineford, where he's going to lose Ace.
Yep.
Like, this is an entire arc where Luffy's just going to suffer loss after loss after loss.
This is the first true loss.
Yeah, where they're suffering massive consequences. And what I think this importantly does is it showcases, from now on, the stakes are higher.
Yeah. Well, this is the first time where Oda really like hits the reset button on the power dynamic in the world.
Yeah.
Where it's like this, and then Impel Down, and then Marineford. It's like one after another. It's like, oh, we thought that we were doing so well, but here's all these significantly more powerful people who kind of treat us like playthings.
Yeah.
Now.
It's not just that they're defeated. They were completely and utterly defeated. They
part of-
suffered
yeah.
a complete collapse is the word.
この日船長モンキー D ルフィ率いる海賊団麦わらの一味は完全崩壊を喫した
It's part of why when I didn't anticipate this, because the word I wrote down was, I was like, I don't know how much I see this as a fight scene so much as I see this as a massacre.
Yeah.
Like
It is.
0 damage dealt to Kuma.
Yeah.
Like brushing things off, and in one touch he eliminates everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's the other word that I wrote down to when I was looking at the Straw Hat crew and thinking about how watching them going through this makes me feel is it feels totally overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like you are stacked up against the force that you have absolutely no ability to do anything about. And you see that as Luffy kind of goes into second gear. He's powering up. He's trying to fight back. And then he realizes there's nothing he can do. And he like completely comes out of that power. And it's like, please stop it.
Yeah. Just shuts down completely.
Yeah. Desperation. Like the shutdown, the running, even though he's not in any version of gear, like the banging his head against the floor. It's like, there's nothing that I can do. I feel so powerless.
Yeah. Yeah. And that comes right after we brought together this entire crew. And like what's happened is that he's assembled a crew, and we've just gotten to the place where we've added the last crew member to our team. Finally, everybody's together, happy, whatever. And then they're all separated. You mentioned hitting the reset button. It kind of feels like, oh no, like all that work, all the emotions of like meeting Usopp, bringing him onto the crew, Sanji, Zoro, and then saving Robin. Like you're still left with the recent memory of going through all of those really emotionally trying experiences of the relationship between all of these team members. And now that's taken that sensitivity you have towards all those moments, and it's completely ripped it open again. It's almost like this moment takes every single emotional moment of unity and bringing together of the team, and it puts them all into a pot, and it amplifies it, and it reverses all of them. It's like brought them all together. Now we're going to take away all of them. And it's like, it's overwhelming. I think that's a good way to put it.
Well, it's like the highs and lows, right? You build up all this momentum with all these wins, all these successes, all these great moments. And then there's something about when you come to this peak, what a total collapse experience like this, utter defeat is like you've climbed so high. Now this is how much farther you have to fall. And it hurts that much more.
Absolutely.
Because you've got all this stuff that's built momentum, and now you've kind of come from these peaks to the valley, and especially with the speed that it happens instantly in one shot, in one moment. This isn't over the course of several arcs that it falls apart. You have all this, and it's like, and Kuma's power is beautiful as a reflection of this. It's like, what is his ability to do? To instantaneously make things disappear. All this work, all this effort, all these character moments, all these relationships gone in a moment.
It's kind of interesting how from a narrative perspective, it's an interesting choice of ability to give the enemy is to separate people when the thing that's almost most important to the show is the relationships between characters.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it's like, it's a strange power, like the ability to send people away from each other. But from a narrative perspective, it's like, oh, that is the exact perfect thing that Oda could have chosen for Kuma's power to be. It fits so well within a narrative structure. The other thing that I find interesting about this is what it does for our insight into Luffy as a character. I find it kind of cool how what this does is it takes a character who is as one-dimensional as Luffy, and kind of like what we talked about for Usopp, it gives him that extra dimension where we do see that through all of the bravado of I'm going to be the Pirate King, it doesn't matter, we're going to make it through. There is this touch point with reality where like, oh no, when you're pushed up against the wall where you actually are completely out of your depths, it's like he actually is able to recognize that.
Well, it's interesting to think about like what are the ways in which you can add depth to a character. And I think one of the ways that you can add depth is like you can have Luffy be still a little bit, the idea of taking Luffy from being one-dimensional to two-dimensional, it can be as simple as what is Luffy's relationship to a particular thing? Friendship, right? When Luffy has friends, he becomes really joyful. He's supposed to be Joy Boy. That's going to show up later. what is his whole goal with becoming the Pirate King? It's so that he can have friends, right? All that. And the show keeps hitting on that touch point over and over again through gains friends, gains friends, gains friends. Simple way to show an extra depth of dimension. What happens when he's on the opposite side?
Yeah.
Loss. And all of a sudden, it's like now you go from one dimension to two dimension because you've hit on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Right? It's like he doesn't just live over here. He lives here, and now we see him over here. And all of a sudden, that is depth.
When you brought that up, it kind of reminded me of like an orchestra or like an ensemble. It's like, or even like a band. You have maybe something like a trumpet that's like a little bit more bright and higher range, and then you have the bass instruments. What really makes for a good musical score or a really good song, I think, is full range of experience. That brings a fuller sound. It brings a fuller richness to what you're experiencing. That's true as well for storytelling, I feel like.
It's interesting now. I think part of a side thing that's really cool about this is that you've brought this example. Because now that I'm watching this, having caught up and having gotten all of Kuma's backstory, that really recontextualizes watching this. And especially the words that he sings, like, to know everything that he's been through and the whole purpose for him doing this, what seems to be huge spoiler alert for One Piece. Sorry if you're not caught up on the manga.
Skip to this time code if you're not caught up on the manga.
So it is one thing to see it be framed as him being an antagonist here. But when you get his backstory to see that actually this is him being the good guy, this is him protecting the Straw Hat crew, and all of the things that come back from his perspective, to then recontextualize his statement of, we will never see each other again, farewell, is like, it's actually kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's like, I know that you hate me. Here's this huge favor that I'm doing you, and we're never going to see each other again.
Yeah.
I really, really hope for everything in my soul that you do become the hero and joy boy that this planet needs it to be.
Yeah.
Like, it's a totally different thing than the antagonist saying, I will never see you again. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Like, and it's wonderful how...
But that's cool how you have a moment where you can read it both ways.
Yeah.
You can,
depending on how much information you have.
It's so powerful and it gives so much depth to a moment. It makes it so much more memorable.
Yeah.
And I think even if you didn't have the information going into this moment, you kind of felt a little bit like that. There was this inkling like there was something about that was deeper than it showed on the surface. I think that's what makes for really, I don't know, that it makes it so much more compelling, so much more interesting. It's really interesting to look at what happens when you have a completely one-sided fight where your protagonists are losing. That tells you a lot of information about them. I also have another example, which is maybe completely the opposite.
Cool.
So why don't we take a look at this scene where maybe an interesting look into what happens and how do you do it right when somebody just absolutely decimates and wins nonstop.
Let's take a look.
Hey, yeah, I wanna shoot, baby.
Did I leave the stove on?
The sequence that we just watched is the exact sequence that got the movie greenlit.
Huh.
Do you know about that story?
No.
Ryan Reynolds played Deadpool in
in
the really terrible Wolverine movie.
I think the Wolverine Origins.
Yeah. And so he played Wade Wilson, who got turned into Deadpool. They sewed Deadpool's mouth shut. They gave him weird blades for hands, and he was on public record saying to the executives who made that movie, it's like, people are going to hate this. Like, this is not going to go well. And so when that was received really poorly, he sort of made it his mission to want to create a better version of Deadpool, actually bring some honor and integrity to the character.
Yeah.
For a character that deserves a lot of honor and integrity.
More than honor and integrity.
Fair enough. Maybe that's a better way to put it. He was really behind the scenes trying to put together this film, and they put together a lower res kind of budget version of the scene that we just watched.
Yeah.
Apparently the exec saw it. We're not going to go through with this, and it got completely halted in its tracks. And so I don't think this has ever been publicly admitted, that it was him who did this, but he more or less sort of gave plausible deniability that was him who leaked that test footage onto the internet.
Yeah.
And everybody loved it. And the positive reception of that was enough to change the studio execs to say, no, we actually have to make this now.
Yeah.
And what I find so interesting is that the reason that the movie was greenlit to begin with was because of a fight scene. And the thing that people loved about it was not the fight scene. It was about the fact that a character was being shown in a way that everybody resonated with.
Yeah.
Because like there was some interesting, cool choreography in that previous Wolverine Origins fight scene at the very end. It's like, cool, well choreographed, fun, flashy moves, but it was missing character. And I think that's what everybody hated about that version of it. And what they loved about this version is that it is the epitome of a fight scene that is designed to showcase the character.
Yeah, like it's really a vehicle to highlight Deadpool's character moments.
Yeah, throughout the entire scene, you're seeing him crack jokes.
Have you seen this man?
You're seeing that the way that he fights is super fun and flashy. It's almost as if this fight scene is being done to show the fact that because he can't die, he has so much extra leverage to be able to have fun in the fight. It's like the way that the fight scene, the choreography is structured is highlighting the fact that he has no fear. And the reason he has no fear is because he can't die. And that's a really important piece of his character and who he is. That's kind of why he's almost like the One Punch Man equivalent in real life action.
Yeah. That's probably a good comparison.
Yeah. So what do you do when you have a fun, interesting, joking, One Punch Man can't lose style character in a live action? It's like he's going to have so much fun with all these fights because you get bored otherwise.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's the fun that makes it a great fight scene. I think it's because the choreography and the character mesh so perfectly.
Yeah.
If you can almost give a playground to the character that you want to highlight who it is they are under the surface, this is a really fun and interesting way to utilize a fight sequence, maybe to its maximum.
Well, it makes me think about how like the importance of your fight choreography and your character meshing.
Yes.
And is it a sequence where you are crafting a fight scene just for the moves and you have a character who is just their characterization and neither of them really feed into each other?
Yeah.
It's like if Jackie Chan in The Drunken Master gets drunk and then has perfect, flawless, not a millimeter out of place technique. It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That classic Donnie Yen fight scene in the alley where him and that guy are like going back and forth with the sticks and just like over and over and over again. It's like, that's flawless, technical, perfect, and it works great for that sequence. But if you transplant that sequence into The Drunken Master, it'd be like, well, what on earth are you doing?
Yeah.
It's great that it's a great fight scene, but it doesn't make any sense.
That's interesting that you point that out because maybe it highlights the idea that the choreography of your fight sequence should highlight the reason that exists to begin with. So for maybe a Drunken Master, for that scene, the whole idea is to show what amazing choreography looks like in the hands of somebody who's completely inebriated.
Yeah.
Versus for Donnie Yen, it's like somebody who is a technical master. What does that fight sequence look like? And in this Deadpool example, what does it look like when you have somebody who more than he wants to win, just wants to have fun and joke around and goof off?
Yeah. So how creative is he going to be? How much, not just is he going to crack jokes, but using things to his advantage in weird and different ways.
Yeah.
And like the ability to like take his foot and turn the steering wheel to flip the whole car over because it gets rid of everybody else. But it's like, he doesn't care because he's not going to die. So whatever.
It's also really cool. And the reason that I really love this is because this is Vancouver.
Yeah.
This was shot on the Georgia Viaduct,
Yep.
which we drive over every so often. It's really cool to be able to, I don't know, little personal thing for you and me. It's like, this is really cool and fun to see our hometown.
Yeah.
Or like home region
being
portrayed on the big screen, which I don't know, Ryan Reynolds is from Vancouver. And so it's fun to see this little throwback to a place that we know and love.
Yeah, exactly.
As I was watching this in preparation for this, I had the epiphany of Deadpool's invincible. How do you keep the stakes high?
Yeah.
If you know the outcome of a fight, it's kind of hard to be invested in it. But what I find that really, from a narrative standpoint, from whoever wrote this particular fight choreography in the way that it's structured, there's two things that I think are done incredibly well. One is that there is almost like there is a narrative countdown, essentially.
Yeah, with the 12 bullets.
I only have 12 bullets, so you're gonna have to share. Let's count them down.
And then on top of that, there is a Jackie Chan style disadvantage. So on top of being one versus like 15 different people, you also have this idea of, I don't just need to defeat all these guys. I need to do it with only 12 bullets.
Yeah.
And then you have you have little quirky elements of his character kind of coming out and the way that he reacts to different, like wasting bullets on a particular guy.
3, 2, stupid!
Worth it.
But it felt good anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then he's got to have creative, fun solutions in order to utilize a single bullet to kill multiple enemies with a grenade, with the 3 guys at the very end. What that does is that sets up needing to overcome a greater obstacle than you otherwise would have, which, I mean, we talked about this before, where Jackie Chan kind of made it really popular, this idea that when you have to overcome ungodly obstacles compared to the bad guys around you, we root for you.
I just keep thinking about the scene where Jackie Chan is beating up everybody while holding a plate over his junk because he's naked. He has to like try to like keep switching out. It's like, that's that disadvantage of there's more than in a fight where the outcome feels like it's already determined. It's what do you add into it? Because it's more than just the fight. It's I have the stakes of limited resources or potential embarrassment or whatever it is.
Yeah. In a way, this feels like a really great example of a fight sequence that introduces a character and doesn't tell them this is Deadpool. He has the ability to, jump between comic book panels. He can't die because X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, we're just seeing that. He can withstand anything. He's really fun. He's going to prioritize kind of having fun over doing things, particularly the correct way to execute a plan. We get a feeling for who he is without needing to be told. It's the epitome of show, don't tell.
It feels like the fight sequence itself is more like it's not a thing that carries the narrative through in this one. It feels more like the thing that's happening around. The thing that I was noticing, what I wrote down was like, Deadpool comes off very expressive.
Yes.
Like both in the, it's like, peeks out over the window to see the guy aiming at him. He's like, ah! Hey! Like moments like that where it's the emotional expressiveness is high, but then there's also expressive like divergence or diversity where it's like, stupid, that was the wrong thing, but totally worth it. It's almost like he's also giving us an insight into his frame of consciousness or like his thought process is all expressed.
Yeah.
It's all explicit. And there's something interesting where I think we're really in this fight sequence, we're not following the action per se until we get to that 12 bullet point.
Yeah.
Really, it's following the beats of the character's expressions that are kind of carrying and weaving the scene through.
Which is interesting that you use the word expressive, because one of the things that they broke down in the creation of not just this one, but movie 2, movie 3 of Deadpool is how do you create expression in a character that's in a mask with no nose, no face, no eyebrows. It's like, how do you do that? So again, it's like with the whole thing about Jackie Chan with the plate over him, trying to cover, it's how do you do things with one hand tied behind your back? It showcases how skilled you were if you're able to succeed. And from a stunt choreography perspective, from a fight choreography perspective, we're able to see that in the scene. But it's also from a storytelling, from a character perspective, it's how great is the writing of Deadpool in this movie that we're able to understand how expressive he is when he's the least expressive he could possibly be in any situation.
I feel like it's even more than just writing in terms of the written words too, because like how does the character move across the screen in a way that expresses?
Writing in the sense of like I would also consider the stunt choreographer. How it's planned out is a version of the writing.
And there's pieces here where like there's whatever limited ability you have even in this particular scene where it's like his eyes go wide, right? There's still limited facial expressions you can do. But then there's also how does he move his body? Like all this like high, big physical expressions, lots of big different movements. Then you've got the actual words that he says. And it's like, oh, these are all like colorful language, lots of weird, off-the-cuff, gross types of analogies and images that he paints with his words. But then there's also the variance in his vocal quality and tone. It's like he goes high, he goes low, he kind of goes all over the place. The melody of his voice is quite varied. So it's like, because face is limited, every single other form of human expression is turned up to an 11.
Well, I may be super, but I am no hero. And yeah, technically this is a murder. But some of the best love stories start with a murder.
Speaking of scenes that show you things about the characters, I think I have one last example that does a really good way of doing that. Again, in a very opposite way of this. I think that you'll probably see when we look at the characterization how it's opposite.
水の呼吸一の型死ねば解放される五の型寒天の銃
Yeah. Wow. Within the span of probably 3 episodes, there's so many different examples of a cool fight scene. You know what's funny too is that I was this close to choosing a Demon Slayer example as well. I was going to go with Rengoku, his fight at the very end of the Mugen Train arc.
Yep.
九の型煉獄や
And interesting how it's a complete opposite end of the spectrum of what would make an interesting fight sequence, because that one is big, bold, flashy, crazy animation happening, like insane amounts of visual eye candy. And this is 100% subversion of expectations story structure. It's like the most crazy, imaginative sort of fight sequences with swords happening right up to this moment and going to be happening right after this moment. And this is just a complete divergence from that.
Yeah, it's like Rengoku's fight ends with a bang. This one ends with like a whisper.
Yeah, ooh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting look into maybe Tanjiro's character specifically.
Exactly why I picked it.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a wonderful example of highlighting a character's traits through the fight sequence.
Yeah.
It's like the choices that a character makes and what they decide to do. For the context for other people, it's like Tanjiro and the rest of the Demon Slayer Corps are going through this process on the mountain where they're training, trying to qualify to become real Demon Slayers, and through that they have to fight real demons. And it's more challenging than it was supposed to be originally. They have more powerful demons than were supposed to be there, and so everybody's getting massacred, and it's all challenging. And it's so easy to look at fighting an enemy or a threat and going in and putting all that effort in and going 100%, making sure that you really eliminate them and celebrating them when you eliminate them. But there's something that I really love about this sequence where it clearly shows that Tanjiro's paying attention, not just to the fight, but he's paying attention to the people that he's fighting. It's like he has a different response for different people depending on the way that they come to him. And it's great when it's like, oh, he sees like everything that this character, Mother, the spider demon, everything that she is expressing that we hear is all in her head. Tanjiro has no access to that. He can't see it, but all he sees is you talk about the opposite of Deadpool, not this gigantic, but like this subtle shift in the hands and the face. And he recognizes, oh, this dramatically changes what this fight is going to look like. This is not somebody who's coming in ready and bracing for attack. This is somebody who's saying, like, I surrender, I give up.
Yeah.
And the wonderful thing it shows us is how does Tanjiro choose to change his response when the person that he's facing changes theirs. He is adaptive, he's responsive, and it really, like, the predominant, the explicitly stated characterization for Tanjiro here is it highlights his kindness, which is crazy to think about when he killed somebody.
Yeah, not the reaction that you'd expect from somebody who you just murdered.
Yeah, but to me, it's such a wonderful example of oftentimes the important thing is not what you do, but it's how you do it. The quality, the attitude, the emotion that you carry into an action might have way more to do with whether that thing is good or bad than the action itself. Like, where's your heart? Where is your mindset? What are your aims in doing this?
Yeah.
And Tanjiro is doing this, like, maybe partially still to protect the people that he cares about. That's what's got him to the dance. But why does he make the choices that he makes in this moment? It's because he sees somebody who is suffering in a particular way, and this is his choice in which to alleviate it.
And you know what's maybe interesting about that too is that I feel like part of the reason why he's able to do that is because he's had a personal experience of seeing that this was a real person at one point in time.
Yeah.
Because his sister is in that same boat.
Well, and it's cool because when you talk about like why does he have that framework, it is because he has Nezuko, who's been transformed into a demon, but still has retained enough of her humanity to not be somebody who's going to be an immediate danger to other people. And so she hasn't died. He still has her, right? And it's really cool because it's like right now in the whole scene, he's carrying her around with him on his back. And I love how you say that like her existence is part of what allows him to have the perspective that he has of the demons. Yeah. It's almost like he's literally carrying empathy on his back with Nezuko. Yeah. Which is cool because like there's almost a piece of this that feels like when I'm looking at this as a like internal family systems parts perspective, like there's a piece of where Tanjiro fights with Nezuko on his back. It's like, I can treat these demons differently than the other demon slayers do because I carry the part of them that I identify with on my back. Yeah. It's like I have insight into why you are the way that you are because I still have that part of me with me. So it's wonderful how it demonstrates the kindness from Tanjiro and like his choice to do the exact same thing, behead the demon, but how? To do so in a way that causes zero pain. In fact, actually provides more positive and pleasant emotions than her interactions with her family does with the other demons, which is like the other great thing that it does is it juxtaposes Tanjiro versus his enemy, like demons versus the demon slayer core, and specifically Tanjiro himself, because the different demon slayers all have their particular different personality traits, all wide and varied, but Tanjiro is clearly epitomized by his kindness. And I find it ironic that the first episode of the entire series in which Tanjiro's family dies, in which Nezuko is transformed into a demon, is titled Cruelty. And it's like, this is the juxtaposition that you carry for the entirety of the show. You have one group of people who are epitomized by cruelty. This is what the demons do. This is how Muzan continues to perpetuate demons in the world, is that he is choosing cruelty over and over and over again. And then Tanjiro, no matter what he does, is choosing kindness. And so it's Muzan's cruelty versus Tanjiro's kindness. Whose ethos is going to win? Whose worldview is going to be dominant in this perspective? And it matters then what they do, because if Tanjiro wins by cruelty, then Muzan wins, right? The hero can't be successful by using his opponent's means. It's like, then that's a signifier of defeat. So Tanjiro chooses to act with as much kindness as the scenario allows him to, which I think is like a wonderful expression of not just the conflict that, and it's highlighting not just the conflict that's going on between two types of characters, but it's the conflict that underlies the momentum of the entire show.
Which makes it super interesting. Because I think one of the things that is super unique about this is it takes the classic kind of shonen trope of the demon inside of you. Yeah. Like the whole Naruto example. You need to control this power and this evil force inside of you. What do you do now when you need to deal with a demon that's in somebody you care about? Yeah. It takes this thing that's like this internal conflict and it externalizes that. And then it puts you in a completely unique perspective where it's like, oh, how do I treat somebody who's got something dark, but there's somebody that I care about?
And then especially for Tanjiro in this circumstance, how do I treat the demon in somebody else?
Well, that's the next
who I have
level.
no relationship to.
Well, that's one step further. It's like, I care about this person, so now that I've experienced this, that extends to everybody else around me.
And that's kind of the trick, I think, is that not just in the show, but it's an example where I think lots of people in the world will not make that step. And it's the whole place where I think people can really lack empathy, is that they fail to recognize that even though your specific experiences might be different, the human experience is universal. Yeah. Whatever happens for you is whatever happens for me. I talked to clients about this week. I talked to clients about this a lot, is like, every person that you meet is a mirror. Every single individual is a reflection of yourself in some way. Whether that's in how you treat them being similar to how you treat yourself, whether that be how you look at the world, but it's always a way to gain insight and perspective if you're looking for it. But way too many people are focused on the differences. And so they say, well, there's this group and there's that group. There's humans and there's demons.
Yeah.
And they're totally different.
Yeah.
But Tanjiro is this wonderful kind of archetype of, like, so many heroes or protagonists, is like the bridge between worlds.
Yeah.
Right? Who is the bridge between humans and demons? It is, technically, I would say it's Tanjiro and Nezuko as a team together.
Yeah.
He's creating connection where there has been division.
Yeah.
And he's doing that through kindness.
Yeah. I find it interesting too then how you can almost take a little bit of the way that he interacts with humans and demons is very similar. Like, he will have conflict with I'm not sure if you're caught up yet, but when they get to spend time with the other Hashira, when he has conflict with the Wind Hashira, when he has conflict with Rengoku's father, it's like that is a similar way of engaging with people. You're just not ending their life. There's not this final piece of like ending them, but it's that same interaction of how do you find humanity and kindness through this very difficult combative experience.
Exactly.
So it is an interesting way that theme runs through the entire show. But what I find interesting too is that I didn't know when we were going to talk about this, but I find it so interesting how Tanjiro as a protagonist is on paper maybe the worst way that you could write a protagonist. There's nothing wrong with him. He's good. He's kind. He's like what is there to latch on to with a character who doesn't necessarily have flaws?
Yeah.
And what I think the show does brilliantly is that it showcases the struggle of how do you engage with the flaws around you. He's not struggling to become a better person, quote unquote. He's struggling with how do I engage with this messed up world around me? And so the focus isn't on his development necessarily. It's focused on his engagement with the world.
Yeah. It's not really about becoming a good person. It's more about staying a good person.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Well, it's like he starts kind.
How do you get not corrupted by the world around you?
Exactly. Like the world is cruel. And you experience that cruelty firsthand. How do you not lose the good parts of you in the face of that and be consumed by the cruelty? And it feels like that's Tanjiro's fight throughout the whole show. Is it like it's suffering after suffering after suffering. And even though they like win, like I don't know how many conflicts they have with people where they don't lose something. Like so far in the show, like in the last like 4 or 5 arcs of the show, the Demon Slayer core leader, Rengoku, and then the Sound Hashira.
Yes.
Like everybody's losing somebody. Like you can't fight or you die or whatever. It's like Tanjiro keeps losing people over and over and over again, no matter how well they do. And so it's as you continue to be pulled at, it doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter how successful you are, cruelty will always start chipping away and taking a piece. Are you still going to be a good person? Are you still going to hold to your ethos of kindness despite being in a world that is immensely cruel?
And it's interesting, that makes a lot more sense now when you think about it, now that you know the Hashira training arc has kind of completed. Each of the Hashira got to the place of where they were because they experienced something terrible at the hands of a demon. And so it's interesting how you talk about maybe Tanjiro's idea, his maybe core idea of him as a character is how do you not get corrupted by the world around you? Because each of the Hashira has been dramatically changed by their similar experiences.
They've been impacted. Lots of them carry the physical scars, but a lot of it comes down to how is it transformed you? Like the Wind Hashira's aggression, like Gyu's melancholy at losing somebody. Like everybody has been transformed and marked by suffering in some way.
Not sure if you've seen the Stone Hashira's backstory yet, but
yeah,
absolutely,
so cruel,
so
heartbreaking.
His character design is almost a little bit on the nose about it, but it really does make sense, and that's everybody's got a different expression than of PTSD, almost in a sense.
That's one way to look at it. Yeah. Well, to a degree, the Rengoku's is very interesting because his cruelty was almost more shaped by his father than a demon.
But yeah, everybody's experienced something akin to that. Everybody's been shaped by their negative experiences. And so, yeah, I think it's a perfect illustration that Tanjiro's role maybe is how do you showcase what it looks like to deal with adversity and difficulty and gross trauma in a healthy way where you're still not taking away the humanity from those who've harmed you.
When you're in a world where trauma shapes everyone, how do you maintain your original shape?
I really like the examples that we each brought. I think they showcased different things. I love how the fight choreography is almost nothing about what we talked about.
Yeah, well, we really didn't touch on it very much at all.
It was almost just like maybe a good fight sequence is a vehicle to showcase more about your characters and about the story. The fight sequences were more like a vehicle just for us to talk about characters that we enjoyed and the reason that we enjoy them.
Yeah, and like how fights can be a really cool vehicle. And again, it's like so, it feels like it's simple in a way where it's not, you and I were having a different conversation about something else before where we were talking about you don't have to do all this fancy stuff.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about all these cool, tricky things that like what's on the very cutting edge of technology. It's like, do you have your basics right?
Yeah.
Do you have the simple things? Have you crafted your characters and led your audience in such a way to where they have investment in them and what they are doing in this fight? Is that fight aligned in terms of how it plays out with either who the characters are or the direction that they're going? And how much does it highlight and bring to light things about your characters that might have been flashes before or kind of kept under the surface? Or does it stretch your characters in a different way to give your audience a new perspective of them?
Yeah. Kind of interesting things to take in. So next time that you see a really amazing, awesome fight sequence that you really resonate with, ask yourself, is it really about the particular way that that person was punched? Was it about like the amazing, intricate choreography? Or is it more that that choreography tells you something deeper about the character and about the story, maybe something that you resonate with personally?
Exactly.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It was a blast. If you have any other TV shows, if you have any other anime movies, any sequences, any particular scenes that you want us to break down that you think would be interesting to talk about, let us know in the comments, and we'd love to take a look at it.
Yeah, any different types of things besides fight scenes, love scenes, something else, like whatever it is, let us know what you want to see.
Yeah.
We're down to talk about it.
If there's any other fight scenes that you think we're like, you are a fool for missing this one, let us know, and maybe we can do an episode 2. Make this a series.
Keep shouting out the things that we're missing in the comments, like Berserk or Free Run or anything else that we're not talking about yet that we'll put it on the bucket list.
Thanks so much for watching, and we cannot wait to see you in the next episode.
Take care, everybody.